Hello and welcome to the Mac Gamecast episode 59. I'm your host, Jon Carr. With me as co-host, Casper. How you doing?
Doing good. As we've just had Dub, so that was super exciting. Little less exciting than I'd hoped for, but still exciting. Lots of fun things to cover there, and all good.
Still no Cyberpunk 2077 for Mac release date.
Yeah.
It's out for Switch 2, and it showed up in a couple either screenshots or like quick video demos somewhere, or maybe that was a developer video I looked at, but anyway, it's coming. But yeah, lots of cool new updates across the Mac ecosystem, mostly on software, I think. Maybe there's some hardware stuff to talk about, but
not really. It is just software, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But cool stuff all around. So I'll let you take the lead on this because you watched everything. I only watched some things, so whatever point you want to hop in, let's just do that.
Sure. I mean, watched everything is a bit strong because obviously Dub runs over a week, and I watched everything of the main keynote that is publicly intended, and then I watched a couple of things on the developer side. I have a lot more on my to-do list for catching up on the rest. Participated in some labs and stuff, but overall, it's been a fun event. We've had obviously the new updates to all of the operating systems. That as they do every year. We saw the new naming scheme. Everything is now 26. They base it on the next year, right? So iPad OS 26, iOS 26, Mac OS 26, and so on. And in this crowd, the Mac OS part is obviously the most important because we are the Mac Gamecast, right? So
yes,
we saw Mac OS 26 Tahoe. And from a gaming perspective, the biggest thing here is Metal 4. Metal 4 is a pretty big API update, and at first it sounded like from the keynote that it was just going to be like 3 big features and that's it. You were going to get like equivalent features to NVIDIA's ray reconstruction and frame generation, and there was an improvement to the Metal FX upscaler, and that pretty much sounded like that was what Metal 4 was going to cover, and that was it. But if you dig into the developer talks about it, Metal 4 is a huge upgrade. It's going to align the APIs a lot more with what DirectX 12 and Vulkan are doing, both to make it easier to port things from those APIs to Metal. The old way of doing it is still supported under Metal 4. You can mix and match features from Metal 1, 2, 3, and Metal 4, and you don't need to change your entire architecture if you're already running a Metal app. But there is a fundamentally new way of constructing your commands to the GPU with Metal 4. And they're already making use of this in Game Porting Toolkit 3, which we'll get back to later on in the show.
Yeah.
So you can already go and try out something that makes use of this, and they've re-architected that to utilize these things that are more DirectX aligned to, port DirectX more easily to Metal. But it also gives more flexibility in parallelizing things. So right now with Metal, for every single frame, you need to create a command queue that you fill up with the commands you want to send to your GPU. And from that, you create a command encoder, and from that, you create a command buffer, and you put all of your commands into that and encode it with the encoder, and then put it in the queue. And that all must happen on the same thread. Where with Metal 4, all of these command buffers can be created on different threads and then synchronized into the same encoder later and stuff. So there's a lot more parallelizable options there. Which will make great use of these big CPUs that we have now with so and so many cores, right? Up to 16 cores on the Max chips and so on.
Yeah.
And they talked a lot about opportunities for preventing shader compilation stutter as well, which is something we see especially much in the world where we're translating with Game Porting Toolkit or Crossover or whatever we're using, right? Because there's fewer opportunities to scan ahead and analyze what shaders might come in the future. So once you hit a shader for the first time, the shader compilation stutter is also going to be bigger. In part also because the process of converting and then compiling the shader is bigger than just compiling the shader. So that's big on the translation side, but it's also big on the native side. It's been a huge debate in the PC space with Unreal Engine, especially because a lot of Unreal Engine games didn't do pre-compilation of shaders when you booted the game. So the first time anything happened in the game, you'd have this little spike in the frame rate. It dropped, and then future instances of the same effect would be fine. But every single time you saw something new, you'd get that little hitch.
Yep.
And Metaphor facilitates a lot to prevent that.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good things there. And that's sort of the really big thing for macOS Tahoe from a gaming perspective. There's also a new Games app coming to all of Apple's platforms, including the Mac. It's kind of like, it's pretty weird to me, because I imagined when they started talking about the Games app that they were going to rip the gaming section completely out of the App Store. Because the Games app does include like an App Store-like component. You can discover games and download them straight from in there. It's also got library and, your friends list and all of the things you would imagine in a games launcher like Steam or whatever. But they haven't done that. What they've done is just made a second place where all of the same stuff exists that also exists in the App Store games page. I find that a little bit weird, because it makes the Games app from the storefront perspective feel a little redundant.
Well, here's a question. I don't know if you know the answer. Does the Games app have access to every game in the App Store? Does it just feature some? Does it just show apps you've already purchased and therefore they
so
show
you have
up?
library that shows everything you've purchased from the App Store. At least the stuff that's still available. I don't know if you can go back and download Infinity Blade that doesn't exist anymore or whatever. I don't think you can, but yeah. I don't know. I've only installed the betas on my iPad, so I'm basing this on the iPad version of the Games app. I don't know if on the Mac you can add non-App Store games like you can with Steam.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. The wording didn't seem to imply you couldn't, but it also didn't explicitly say you could. It just said it's a home for all the games on your Mac.
Exactly.
Basically what it said. It's like, well, I got games in a bunch of places, so
yeah.
Hopefully,
so I'm hoping you can do that, or maybe even like log into your Steam account and have some integration or whatever. I doubt that, but yeah, at least.
Manually adding them would be okay as long as they allow it. That would be nice.
Yeah, but the iPad app obviously doesn't have that.
Yeah.
But it does seem like it has all access to all of the App Store games. But it does categorize them, just like the App Store does, for that matter, into arcade, Apple Arcade, and non-Apple Arcade apps. And that is sort of like from our, enthusiast gaming perspective. The downside to the Games app is that it still has that Apple Arcade focus. Less so than some previous initiatives from Apple we've seen on the gaming space, but it does still seem to be targeting that more. I don't know what the right word is, maybe just, casual gamer or whatever the target audience you would call for Apple Arcade is.
Right.
Because sometimes it seems like it's kids games, but it's not always kids games. It's also just, lower scoped games, phone games and that sort of thing. So that still seems to be the primary target for the Games app, but then they still showcase big things on it, like Assassin's Creed Shadows or whatever.
Yeah, which is not on arcade.
Yeah.
That I know of, anyway.
No, it definitely isn't. So that still puts me in this position of, I don't really know what the purpose of the Games app is. Obviously, the purpose is just to congregate all of the things that used to be in a lot of different places into one place, but they haven't removed them from all of the other places. So
yeah, from what I've seen, I was just looking a little more now at it because I didn't look too closely at it before. It seems its main sort of function is to replace Game Center.
Yes, but Game Center still exists as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, if you go into the settings, at least in the first beta, things can change.
Okay.
But in beta 1, Game Center is still under settings just like it used to be. But there's also the Games app, which, it looks like it replaces Game Center, but yeah.
I mean, if it truly replaces Game Center, I can understand it. If they some reason leave that, and then it's like, wait a minute, now there's like 3 things.
Exactly.
Yeah. They claim, social features, discoverability, in-app events, your library, search, replaces Game Center, blah, blah, blah. That's supposedly what's going on with it. I mean, again, it's going to come pre-installed, just like the App Store, and all new, starting with whatever, macOS 2020. Is it just 26, not 2026?
Yeah, just
macOS 26 and all the other adjacent iPad, iOS ones. It's just going to be there. So, if it's more of if the UI is better than the App Store, I'll take it. I don't care how redundant it is. If it's better than the App Store, which is terrible for searching and trying to look at information for a game, it's like, I'll take it.
I mean, I definitely agree. And I would say Beta 1 is promising in the sense that they are separating it out. And I do think that's a good move. I don't think they should have kept it in the App Store. I think they should have taken this opportunity to clean the App Store a bit more and focus the App Store on apps and make it more searchable for apps, and then make the Games app more searchable for games, and categorize things more into distinct subcategories rather than just this huge tab that is games. You could have more genre-based search or whatever.
I agree.
But I do think that this is the right approach, that now we have 2 different places that can become more distinct over time, and the Games app will allow you to filter things more based on things that make sense for games rather than things that make sense for apps.
Yeah, correct. And like you said, it's a framework. Maybe in the future they do streamline it the way you're talking about and keep them separate. But for now, I can understand maybe why they're not. If people are unaware and they go open the App Store, they haven't looked at maybe an update or noticed they have a game up on their phone and like, oh my God, all games are gone from the App Store. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah.
Definitely.
But it's nice to see, like, Apple hasn't done something directly very game supporty in a while. I mean, I know they've been sponsoring some games to bring to Silicon and this and that, but, I'm thinking way back when they actually had a gaming section on their website. And not that this is exactly that, but it's a step kind of in that direction to me.
I mean, I would almost say it's more than that gaming section on the website, because who goes to the website anymore? Like, you and I might go there every now and then, right? But the average person rarely goes to the Apple website, I would say. Or not even the average person, but the average Apple fan probably even doesn't go there that often.
Yeah, we tend to go there a lot. But
yeah, but everyone looks at their phone and their Mac and their iPad home screen all the time,
right? It's true. Yeah, especially if they pre-install it maybe prominently right in the whatever.
I mean, it goes right on your home screens, at least on the iPad and iPhone. It doesn't go to the app library thing. It just pops it up on the home screen. Okay.
It'll probably be in the whatever toolbar thingy. I don't know what you call it on your Mac. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. It's in the right direction. I was honestly expecting an actual game announcement of some type, i.e. Cyberpunk, but maybe that's a bit of a segue into what new games they showed are coming later / why Cyberpunk isn't here yet.
Yeah. I would like to just rant a little on the Cyberpunk thing, because I do find it extremely weird. Because obviously they said, was that the fall last year, right? They said the Cyberpunk was coming early this year. And they said that at that time as well, that it was going to have frame generation and ray reconstruction. And these things that we now know are part of Metal 4, that back when they announced all of this, we were sitting there going like, how are they going to facilitate this? Because it's not a technology we've seen on the Mac before natively, right?
Correct.
Now we know with Metal 4, but how was this timeline ever going to work out that it was going to be early this year when all of these features, they must have known back then that these features were scheduled for the fall operating system update.
Right.
So were they going to release Cyberpunk with all of these features in some other version? Or were they just going to mark them as well, they do exist, but they're coming later with the next... How was this timeline looking initially?
It's very curious. It's very curious.
Very curious. It also makes me wonder if there were plans to put Metal 4 in a point release, like 15.6 or whatever, or 15.4 or whatever, instead of macOS 26. Also because like when Apple talked about Metal 4 at the conference, they kept referring back to existing games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, as if Assassin's Creed Shadows is already making use of Metal 4. But at least the developer documentation I looked at for some of the APIs, they do explicitly say macOS 26 only.
That's interesting because, when you go, here we go, to Apple's website and you click on Metal 4 and dig deeper, and it says explore Metal 4 games, and the cover photo is AC Shadows, and including a couple other older games, I forget which ones. And I was also like, did they just like stealth update it? Did they backport it? Are they just using this as a recent Mac release because it's the biggest one? I don't know. It's all a little haphazard and not fully clarified. And obviously, as you said, the timeline's off. So,
and I also do wonder if it maybe like they have implemented already a Metal 4 path in those games, but also a Metal 3 path. So if you do install the Tahoe beta, you will get Metal 4 features in them already. Like I don't know. I haven't installed the macOS beta yet, but it's very confusing. But that's the landscape apparently. That confusion.
Right. So it definitely is coming, but probably not till the fall. I don't, they didn't say anything like it's going to launch day one when macOS 26 launches, or at this event. They didn't say anything. It's still technically listed as coming early.
They did, as you said earlier, show it off a few times. I don't think they did it during the main keynote, but they did during Platform State of the Union and some of the developer talks later.
Correct.
And they always just showcased, look at how good Ray reconstruction looks or whatever, but didn't comment at all on the timeline slip.
No, and they weren't even really talking about Cyberpunk. They were just like, here's this game which utilizes it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they did show up a graphic, at least, which is nice, of games coming soon. So Cyberpunk is the one in the top left. There's a graphic of 21 games or something. Cyberpunk's the main one. The only other big notable one is like Hitman World of Assassination, to me, specifically. There's a bunch of other interesting stuff. I mean, we have the RoboCop game was recently out on the App Store, the shooter version. But for some reason, it's still like $60. I think it's cheaper on PC. Or it went on sale for like a day. It was weird. They didn't do much of a sale. There is a Lies of P expansion out already, like now. It was out like that day. So that's on Steam, maybe the App Store as well. I didn't look. Sniper Elite 4 must have done well enough because Sniper Elite 5 is coming. If you just,
as we talked about earlier, that was also a weird ordering of things.
Very weird.
But made sense if the community didn't like 5 as much as 4, or what was we concluded.
That was our answer. That was what we concluded. Yeah. But they said, I think somewhere Sniper Elite 5 is coming next year, so it's still quite a ways off. I'm like, does this really take that long to port? Or are they just busy? I don't know, whatever. A couple things we've already seen before on the list, Crimson Desert and what's it called? There's some like Infinity Nikki. I swear we've already seen a couple of these already.
Yeah, we talked about Infinity Nikki in an early episode as well, yeah.
And there's some,
there was the Ensoid thing. Wasn't that what it's called? Ensoid?
Yeah, it's basically Sims, but modern graphics, and I think it's made by a Chinese developer. So, like, a lot of the default people just look Chinese and stuff. So,
I will say about it, though, I think that one was showed off at the keynote.
It looked
great. Like from a visual perspective.
The graphics are stunning.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was some sort of paid advert because what's his name? Craig was like talking about it, and it got a full like 2-minute trailer, whereas everything else was like a few seconds or a photo. So
it did get a surprising amount of screen time for what it is.
It felt like a weird advert, but I'm not complaining. It was just kind of funny.
I do think it's great to have on the Mac though, because we have had a long history of having Sims games.
Yes.
And if this does take off as like the next generation of Sims games, it's good that it continues to exist on the Mac. And that is also a kind of game that even like not that hardcore gamers often enjoy. So
correct.
It's good to have.
Yeah, approachable. It's been out on Steam for a bit, and I think it has mostly positive reviews overall. So like most people are liking it. And yeah, the graphics are insane. Like approaching like photorealistic. It's like really, really good. There was a couple other interesting games on here, but really I don't know why Eve's on here. Eve has been out on the Mac forever. I guess it's a new expansion or something.
It was some new expansion thingy, but yeah, just like, when back in the day, they always showed off World of Warcraft expansions on these sort of things.
That's true.
And you're just like, yeah, of course. But okay, you can pad out your list a little.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Island 2, that was announced, I feel like a year or more ago for Mac, still not out. Maybe it's also a Metal 4 thing or something.
I don't know. That one was like, yeah, as you say, it's been on the lists of upcoming games.
It's been on the list for a while.
Way long, yeah.
Yeah. One other one I want to mention quickly, just because I played the demo, not a Mac demo, a PC demo through Crossover on Steam Next Fest. Into the Dead or Darkest Days. It's basically This War of Mine, but with zombies.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
That's what I thought, but I got to say the demo was really clunky, but I think it was its very first beta release, so I can't knock it too hard. The concept sounds super fun. The demo was a little sketchy, but I want to give it a shot because I think This War of Mine's a very good game, and zombie games are fun. So yeah, more good stuff coming. Minorly disappointing. There's not a big release like right now, but unless you count Lies of P expansion Overture, it's not a standalone expansion. You do need the main game. I heard it's good, but so outrageously hard, the developers have to patch in some sort of new reduced difficulty. That's what I heard, allegedly. So
my brother really liked Lies of P a lot, but I don't feel like we can justifiably call an expansion DLC thingy a big Mac release coming up.
No, that's what I mean. It's just like Eve Frontier. It's like, well, the base game's already there and all its other content.
Yeah.
This isn't a brand new thing coming. It's already been out. So what's interesting, going back to RoboCop for a moment, the game's done pretty well on PC. I personally think the game's too expensive on PC or Mac. I don't think it's a $60 game. I played the demo.
It definitely seems like a AA game at best.
It's a AA game, and 50 is the absolute max. I honestly think it's a $40 game.
Yeah, personally. That would be reasonable enough, I think.
40, it feels like 40 is a sweet spot. I would pay $40 for it. I actually went to the App Store, and I thought, this will be like $40, I'll buy it. And I'm like, $60? No way, bro. It's not that I can't afford it. It's just it feels... I'll only pay a certain amount for a certain experience. And that game, I will not pay them more than $40 for it. It's really fun, but it's not a $60 game. $50 if you twisted my arm and I really want it, but I'm not even that big of a RoboCop fan. They're fun. I like the movies, and I think the game's pretty good. I mean, it feels like a B movie, B game on purpose. So it really fits into that AA. Anyway, basically wait for a sale. I think it's great. Interestingly, this new one actually is a standalone expansion. Kind of weird, but you can technically play it by itself, so it's fair that it shows up here. It's a legitimate new game.
Yeah,
but apparently,
I always find it interesting when game developers do those standalone expansion experiences.
I don't really know I don't know if it's the buying. Do they just give you a brief? This is what happened before. You can just jump in if you didn't play the first game or the core game or whatever you want to call it.
I don't know about RoboCop, but games I've seen do similar things in the past tend to be spin-off tales that don't tie into the main plot enough that you really need to know it.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely played some before long ago. I can't really think of what. I mean, I've been on a Resident Evil binge, and unfortunately we couldn't do a show last month. So we're actually almost 2 months since our last show. But I went on a huge Resident Evil binge, which included Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 7, and RE8.
Yep.
RE7 and 8 do directly connect, but RE8 is standalone, obviously. But it's literally a direct sequel. End of 7, here 8 starts. But of course, there's a feature here's a quick recap of what happened in the first game. But that's little, it's a big franchise. It makes kind of more sense that they actually have numbered series, although I think it's the first time they've actually connected 2 big games back to back directly, same character, same storyline. I personally didn't like them very much. I didn't like the setting. I didn't like the first person. I didn't think the story was that compelling. But I'm getting sidetracked. I could do a whole episode on just Resident Evil, but not on this list, but shortly after, I just want to mention this because we're talking about new games. Summer Games Fest, I believe. There's a bunch of game shows going on right now, all over the place. Xbox, PC, Sony, whatever. Resident Evil 9 was announced, Requiem. And all the RE games have been coming to Mac, so I assume RE9 will also come to Mac, and it's coming, I believe, next spring, so it's not that far off. Another, 9 months or something.
Cool.
Approximately. So that one, however, you can play in first and third person both. You can choose. So I'm a little skeptical from a design standpoint. Like, can they balance it? But seeing as I really hated the first person of RE7 and 8, I'm glad at least they're going back to third, optionally for RE9.
Yeah, I find a lot of the times when games give you that option, it tends to be that the game is clearly designed around one mode, and then the other is just an option that feels more clunky.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, apparently a few journalists got like a closed door demo or hands-on even, and they said it works really well. I'm still sketchy because that's subjective, right? Like it may be fine for you, not for me. But anyway, I don't want to go too much on an RE9 tangent or Resident Evil tangent, but I feel like that's worth a mention because all the other games have been coming, including the remakes. Whoever keeps porting them, Capcom. I don't know if Apple's paying them or they're just doing it or what. A quick segue and I'll be done with Resident Evil. I definitely paid my dues because I bought RE3 on sale and thought I would just sort of check it out on the side. But then I waited some time, played it, and then I thought, oh, this is so fun. I'll keep playing Resident Evils, but the sale it went over. So I then bought RE2 for $40. And I'm like, okay, because I thought I could play it like 2 or 3 times. I had a vague memory of the original. But in the remake, there's really no reason to replay it, unfortunately. They kind of condense everything together. So I was like, shit. But it was still a really good game. Like, it was fine. Then I tried the RE4 demo and was so impressed. I'm like, well, shit, now I got to buy this game. And but unfortunately, it's a $60 game. And I was like, kind of expensive. And there's a $10 DLC. Spoiler, I bought both. So I pumped like $120 into Resident Evil in the span of a month. So I'm like, okay, I've done my part for the Mac game ecosystem lately. RE4 is like a 20-hour game, though. So $60 is okay. Anyway, Resident Evil, it's fun. There's more games coming. We have a lot of games now. There's a couple of standouts here. To me, it's really Cyberpunk, Hitman, and then it's like, well, do you really like zombies? Well, you have Into the Dead or Dead Island 2. Do you like shooting Nazis? Who doesn't? You have Sniper Elite. You want Liza P, you got Liza P. You want Sims or anime or fun stuff. There's a couple of those floating around. It's a bit of something for everyone, more or less.
But from like taking the pulse of Mac gaming perspective, I do think it's extremely disappointing that we are in a situation where WWDC is giving us a games app and they don't have more games to give us than
it's a mess.
Mostly what we already had before. Stuff we already knew we were getting.
Yep.
And a Hitman game where we used to have Hitman, quote unquote, one of the new batch of Hitman games.
Yeah.
With a native Mac port that I think actually came out closer to the release of the PC version than Hitman.
Yeah, Feral did it, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And now World of Assassination or whatever, that's like quite a while ago that came out on PC and everything else, right?
Yeah, and they merged Hitman like 1, 2, and 3 all together or something. I'm a little...
Yeah, they did. So I think it was the case of you bought 3, and then if you already owned 1 and 2, you could get the levels of 1 and 2 put into your game of 3 with slightly improved visuals and everything, right?
Correct.
But I don't know how that's going to work out in this case because we have Hitman 1 natively on Mac. We don't have Hitman 2, and we have now getting Hitman 3.
I assume it's going to be some sort of like ultimate backport all-in-one collection-y thing, but maybe not. They've done weirder things before. It's very reminiscent of...
I'm hoping that's the case, but it is very...
Total War Warhammer does the same thing, 1, 2, 3. If you own the content of the previous games, you get it unlocked in the newer one or vice versa. Cool idea. I do think Hitman series is, quite entertaining. I mean, it's a little grim. You are playing an assassin, but in terms of like an intellectual puzzle where you don't actually have to engage in combat if you don't want to, and you just like shenanigan everyone to death with like environments and whatever.
They do also make the games intentionally a little bit silly at times to take the dark.
It has some dark humor to it. So yeah, I do agree. It's like a swing and a miss. Like, you go to the theater, the curtain opens, and it's like, ta-da! We have this stuff coming. And here is the wrapper for it. And it's like, well, could you open the wrapper and show us something? They're like, no, it's coming later, sometime in the future. And you're like, but we're sitting here now and you're showing it to us. Don't you have anything more to show you? No, it's just coming later in the future. And we're like, oh, cool, but kind of disappointing.
Exactly. And like the fact that they're giving us a games app where they're like, this is the new home for all of your games. Which games? don't talk about that. What? Like, when
Yeah.
you announce a games app, you should be leading with, and here are all the amazing games we're putting in the games app. What is this? I shouldn't be complaining that much. I'm still happy they're doing the games app. I'm happy with the direction of a lot of the initiatives. But I do think it's a little lackluster.
It is, and I was just thinking, like, Death Stranding 2 is coming out soon, but it only as a PS5 exclusive, and there's no PC plans yet. So we do know it's coming to Mac, but seeing as there's not even a PC release date, because that's in it's like in 10, 12 days, it's coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was a PS5 exclusive. I just checked. I was like, oh, maybe in 2 weeks we'll get Death Stranding 2 or something, but it's like, no. It's just, again, sometime later. And of course, there's no guarantee it'll show up the same time as the PC release either, but you know, you could hope.
But I don't even think Apple needs to like give us a lot of announcements in terms of quantity here.
It should have been one anything.
Exactly. Like when they announced the Games app, they should have said something along the lines of, and for the Games app, next year or whatever, you'll be able to play The Witcher 4 or GTA 6 or something. Right?
Yeah.
Even if it's far away, just pre-announce. And we're working with CD Projekt Red to bring Witcher 4 or Rockstar to bring something.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been nice. Or again, you know, here's a Cyberpunk release date. Here's just something. I mean, the only thing they mentioned is the Lies of P Overture, and it's out now. It's like, well, cool, but it's an expansion. Doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's disappointing. We have good stuff coming. Once again, I feel like we're in this like lull period where we're almost like we were talking about the beginning of Silicon in 2021, late 2021 or whatever. And we're like, there's a lot of really good groundwork being laid here. Metal 4, Game Porting Toolkit 3, some promising like big releases on the horizon, maybe in the next 3, 6, 9 months. It's hard to tell exactly. But there's nothing like overly exciting right now. If you're like, I want to play a cool new game, it's like, well, we got a bunch of not new games that are cool, but there's nothing really new right now.
I think my frustration just primarily comes from the fact that I feel like the momentum is dropping.
That's what I meant by a lull. Like it's
because we are seeing advances in the surrounding stuff, the frameworks like Metal and the Games app and that. But at the last like 5 Apple events, we saw big games on stage.
Yeah,
and we didn't really have that much this time. Not to the same degree that we've had the past few events. And
correct.
And I was really hoping that momentum was gonna not just keep going, but increase. And the fact that we're having a decrease of momentum makes me fearful that it's going to be another cycle of it's building momentum, and then we land the same place we've landed so many other times where we've been like, Mac gaming is on the rise, and it doesn't rise as much as we want, and then we're back in that like it's still an uber niche that doesn't really become the big thing where all big games get ported to the Mac eventually.
Yeah, it's a reasonable concern. I think, especially now that Metal 4 and Game Porting Toolkit 3 is available or about to be available, whatever. I feel like, okay, let's see what happens in the next year.
Yeah.
You know, let's make sure, let's get Cyberpunk out. Let's get whatever these other games on this list out. Let's get Resident Evil 9. That's always a hit for horror fans. And then like, okay, what's happening in 2026? Are we getting like, people are like, here's these new tools. It's easier to port than ever. It's easier to match to Metal, DX12 and Vulkan than ever. What are you going to do with this? Or what is Apple going to do with it to entice anyone or whatever? If we don't really get anything of substance, I would be concerned then. For now, I'm like in a wait and see mode. Like they have new tools to do it, better and easier than before in theory. So, less reasons to say no to porting to Mac, more reasons to say yes. That's where I'm waiting. Like I completely agree with you. Like this was a very obvious momentum point they could have kept coasting on and, zoom forward even more instead of like, well, they didn't hit the brakes, but they're basically just like in neutral, like coasting along right now kind of a thing. And it was like, okay, the car isn't stopped, but I thought it was going to go faster.
And if you don't hit the accelerator, it will slow down.
That's correct, Amundo. So I'm like, all right, give them a little time, give them 6 months or something. maximum 9. And yeah, will they hit the accelerator, or are we just going to drift to like we're putzing along again, and cars starting to sputter? So I'm willing to give them not the benefit of the doubt, but the benefit of time. I say them as in the general sense of Apple and the developers and all that, the game devs, and see what they do with the new tools and Porting Toolkit 3 and blah, blah, blah. And again, how's the reception of Cyberpunk? Is that a good port? Does it run well? I'm going to say, again, circling back really quick to Resident Evil, performance-wise, very impressed. The Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes look extremely good. They're very modern-looking games. And they only came out a few years ago on PC, so relatively new there as well. And the performance, incredibly good on my M1 Pro. And I don't mean just playing on my laptop. I'm playing on my 4K ultra-wide screen at maximum res, and it's just smooth. I did go back and test it. I was getting 60, and this is on high settings, 4K, M1 Pro. I was getting, I think, about 70 FPS indoors, and outdoors it would drop to 30 to 40 because it was just more to render and stuff. So I was very impressed by that, and I was like, I'm only on M1. I'm not on an M2 and M3 and M4 or anything. So I'm like, how well can they? Obviously, it's a different engine, but it's a well optimized game, and it gives me hope. Same thing, RE7, RE8, very well optimized. My hope is, man, they got to get Cyberpunk right. Even on PC, it's an intensive game.
I do think that one will do well.
Yeah,
in part because of the. It seems like whenever they show off the tech demos at WWDC, they point out a collaboration with CD Projekt Red to make the best use of metal features as they can.
Yeah.
So I do expect that one to be knocked out of the park.
I hope so. CD Projekt has a history on PC side. They work with NVIDIA all the time. The latest, greatest NVIDIA stuff is tech demoed in Cyberpunk first before anywhere else practically. So
yeah. And it seems like they're doing the same thing here with Apple because at the developer talks, they talked a lot about neural rendering, just like NVIDIA does, right? With the denoisers for ray reconstruction and all that, and pointed out the collaboration with CD Projekt Red to get that just right in a shipping example of the technology, or future shipping example of the technology.
And what's wild is, I think by the time Cyberpunk actually comes out on Mac, it'll almost be 5 years old on PC or console, whatever. But the game looks freaking good on when you can crank the settings. It's it doesn't look like an old game. I guess they've been updating it too.
Yeah, the maximum settings you can crank today are nothing like the maximum settings at release.
That's true.
The full path tracing thing came out several years later and shit, right? So
yeah, correct. Yeah, stunning game. Obviously, I'm a Cyberpunk super fan, but damn, does the game look good on a nice monitor with nice graphics. It's just yeah, anyway, I'm not going to keep fawning over Cyberpunk, but yeah, so it's interesting. But what else do we get at the Apple event? What else of interest is on the menu?
Well, one thing that's interesting is that we now have a timeline for the end of the Intel era.
That's right, we do.
macOS Tahoe is the last major release of macOS that will fully support Intel machines. After that, we're on the 2-year security update cycle, where macOS Tahoe will get 2 years of additional security updates. Apple often points out that this is not comprehensive security updates. So if there is some minor little security issue that they deem not that important, either because the attack vector requires, you're already running software with administrative privileges on your Mac, and it is not running, what's it called? The thing where you secure the kernel more.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
If you've disabled that and all sorts of things, they might deem the security vulnerability small enough that they only patch it on a future release and not part of the backported security and all that. So it isn't comprehensive security, but you get that additional security updates for 2 years, and that's the end of Intel. So my condolences to all you, the owners of cranked up 2019 Mac Pros.
Right.
Behind me is the 2020 iMac that I've given to my partner after I upgraded to Mac Studio, and that's of course also the end of that. But at least when people bought that machines, they knew that the transition was happening, which
Correct.
the Mac Pro owners sadly didn't.
Oh yeah, fair.
Yeah, but that's the end of Intel. After that, we're Apple Silicon only, and then Rosetta. Rosetta will be supported up to and including completely. What was it? macOS 28 or 27? 28, right?
20. I know for 27 for sure. They said something about partial support for certain old games and.
Yeah, so the language was initially confusing, and I had to dig into it a lot. I believe it said full support up until and including 28.
I'm trying to search.
The phrasing, as Jon said, is that after that, they will keep Rosetta around in a limited capacity to support unmaintained games. And I find it interesting that they specifically point out games there. Partially because the requirement for games from like a translation layer perspective, like Rosetta, is bigger than the requirements for a regular application. The games use a lot of advanced instructions as well as the general purpose instructions that any applications are going to use of the CPU instruction set. So when I first read that, I really wondered like how Apple was going to distinguish that, if they were just going to like look at the category of application and only apply Rosetta if it was a game, or what kind of components they might strip out of Rosetta, because I didn't feel like they could really strip out anything and still maintain compatibility with games. But after looking into it quite a lot, it sounds like the only thing they're really stripping out of Rosetta is the ability to compile new applications from Xcode targeting Intel. So you will not be able to create new software targeting the Intel architecture. You'll only be able to create new software and new updates to your software targeting Apple Silicon. The build chain will be removed, but anything that is already built for Intel, regardless if it's a game or an application, should continue working under Rosetta 2 at the current moment for an indefinite amount of time. Like, Apple hasn't put an actual timeline on that.
It is interesting. Yeah, I did just double check their wording, and full supported through macOS 27. Starting with macOS 28, it will only be a subset of Rosetta functionality aimed at supporting all unmaintained gaming titles that rely on Intel-based frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But it seems like what that actually means is that Rosetta 2 will continue to exist exactly as it's. They will not fundamentally remove any functionality from the translation of Intel code to Apple Silicon code or ARM code. It will only be the build chain that you will not be able to build new software targeting Intel architecture.
Right.
And that's very important for Game Porting Toolkit. So if we want this world where we can continue using Wine and Crossover and everything else to run x86 based games in a performant manner, Rosetta is extremely important, especially now that your boot camp is dead and everything. So if we assume that there is going to be a point in time where Apple completely kills off Rosetta, the world for running Windows software on a Mac is going to be very different.
I guess I'm just not tech savvy enough. Can Crossover somehow implement a version on Silicon that allows it, or no, it relies on the architecture of...
It would be possible, but it would be a lot less performant.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. There's also hardware components in the current set of Apple Silicon chips, specifically there to speed up Rosetta.
Right.
One huge example is the memory ordering, because x86 chips make some guarantees about what happens when one CPU core does certain memory operations and how those memory operations will be visible to other CPU cores. And those guarantees are not the same on ARM chips, where you need to explicitly put a barrier operation in the code to say, now I want you to synchronize this memory across all the cores in the system. And Apple has a bit you can flip in their chips to enable what is called total store order, TSO, that they enable when they run Rosetta to have the chip in hardware behave as an Intel chip from a memory perspective.
Right.
So yeah, if they ever get rid of Rosetta and they then change their chips to not have this functionality explicitly for Intel, then the performance is also going to drop as a result of that.
Well, I think what'll maybe be telling is what, like, do the M5 chips still have it or strip it out, or maybe it's there and then in M6 they're there or not. You may be able to glean from that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least for the next few years, we're okay. I say we as in the people who like to do crossover and wine and etc. on their Mac for games or otherwise.
I think there'll always be a future for it, regardless of to what degree Apple supports it. But to keep it as performant as it is, we do need Apple to support it to some degree.
Right.
Especially when there is that architectural gap.
Yeah.
But even if we need to suffer a performance drop, I do think that the community will always try and carry us along with options.
Yeah, I'm shocked at how well crossover can work. I've had a few instances of some random like indie game demos not working at all, like couldn't even load them from the next fest because there's tons of demos that are PC only. Some are Mac demos. I tried a few of those that are interesting. But yeah, the Resident Evil 4. Oh no. Resident Evil 4 has a demo, but of course on the App Store you can download and play a portion of it. But what was it? Aliens Fireteam Elite. You know, like the third-person shooter. My friend bought it on sale for $6. So he actually thought it was a different game, the RTS one. He just mixed them up, but he had already bought it, so he was like, whatever. And then I bought it as well and tried it. I'm like, well, I don't have my PC anymore. I sold it. Will it work through crossover? And surprise, surprise, it works again. I can play it on like medium settings, 4K, and I get like 30, 40 FPS. I could tone down my res, but I'd rather have the big resolution than like more frames or more. And I didn't do anything. I just did the standard. I'm using the Game Porting Toolkit drop-in, thanks to Andy Tizer's video on YouTube. I just followed that real quick. And again, it just works really well. And I'm like, damn, this is pretty good. You know, not bad at all. So
I really do think we're at a point where that tech stack with crossover and Game Porting Toolkit and all that is extremely close to being as good as Proton. Or at least extremely close to being as usable as Proton. Proton might still have performance benefits and whatnot, but from a compatibility perspective, still with the huge caveat that Proton also has, that a lot of the DRM and anti-cheat will not work, and that's the same on Steam Deck and Proton. But at Valve has more leverage to push developers to do it, like if Steam Deck don't, than Apple does. But if the game doesn't ship with all of that in any way, shape or form, then Game Porting Toolkit and crossover really has a high level of compatibility at this point, which it really didn't before Apple Silicon. If you use crossover back then, the amount of games, especially on the like DirectX 12 level of games, that ran well or ran at all, almost nothing. And DirectX 12 the crossover didn't really have an answer to that before Game Porting Toolkit. They were working on something themselves, and then Apple did the whole thing and all that. But like the fact that we've reached the compatibility tier we have at this point, this quickly really is incredible. Amazing work by those developers.
I'm very impressed personally. Like, I'm like, maybe this will run on low 20 frames per second, and I'm like, it's running on my 4K ultra wide monitor at like 30 to 60 with medium high settings. I'm like, say what? That's cool.
and with Game Porting Toolkit 3, features like ray reconstruction and frame generation and all these things from Windows titles implemented against the Windows APIs for these things. I don't know if it'll support like NVIDIA or AMD APIs for this, but either one or perhaps both will be from Game Porting Toolkit translatable to the metal versions of those features, which is amazing.
Yeah, RTX and ray it looks really good. Or ray reconstruction, which is maybe a even better version, but
also there's updates to the Metal HUD. For one thing, it's going to be able to show more information, and it's going to be more configurable in what information you want it to show. So if you just want a frame rate counter, you can get that. You don't need all of the extra
Oh,
stuff.
thank goodness. Yeah, I was a little tired of the giant, 15% of my screen being this overlay.
It's also going to be more user-friendly. It's going to get a little menu bar item now. That is the metal HUD where you can enable, reposition, configure all of the information, what you want on screen or not, from the menu bar without needing to fiddle with environment variables and all that.
Yes.
For developers, it's going to include a feature where you can get advice from the metal HUD on performance optimizing your game, whether you're running native or in Game Porting Toolkit mode, where it will say across the top of the screen, while you were rendering this frame, you did this thing that took this much amount of time. There's a better pattern for that.
Right.
So that's sort of optimization help, which is pretty neat. Also, especially if we're looking from a testing perspective at a game running through Game Porting Toolkit, and we're looking at it going why is this thing performing so poorly? Is it because of the way the game is made, or is it a hardware thing? We have better tools for analyzing that now, which is neat. And what else was there? There was something else that I was thinking of about the whole new thing there. That was cool. Yeah, whatever. I can't remember that right now.
But. Yeah, adjacently, I don't think we mentioned Steam now has a native Apple Silicon app, but in beta, you have to go to your preferences and oddly the interface tab and opt into the beta if you haven't already, and then it'll restart and update itself. And we can both say it works way quicker, much more snappy and responsive.
Just based on gut feel, I would say launch is 4 times faster than it used to.
Oh my god, way faster. I just tried it. It was 3 seconds, 2.5, 3 seconds to launch for me.
I still think it's too slow because it's there's a lot of times where I'm I have Steam. I need to open Steam to get this. It's a minor hassle, of course, but I do think if you compare against something like just opening a game that's in your launchpad that you got from the App Store, the biggest downside to Steam is that I need to open Steam. But it is so much faster that it really decreases that quote unquote burden of opening Steam a lot.
Yeah, and the general, scrolling, resizing, clicking around, everything's just smoother. And no noticeable tearing or lag or whatever. It works as you would hope or expect. Much improved. So that's been nice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it is the final piece of the puzzle because they updated the underlying libraries quite a while ago now to support a native Apple Silicon with the Steam overlay from in-games and all that. But the main client itself took a while, but we're finally getting there.
It did take quite a while, yeah, but good to know it's out now. Yeah, I'm going to be poking around more of it later. But yeah, nice. So we did express some disappointment, but overall, there's some good stuff. Again, most of it's groundwork, but more games are coming.
It's important to say that fundamentally, after WWDC, is still a better gaming place to be than before WWDC.
Yes,
it's not that we've taken actual regressive steps. It's just that we want the momentum to stay higher.
Correct, Amundo. Yep, but let's see what they do with the new tools. More metal, and supposedly this, I think, fall, it's rumored the M5 chips might launch or maybe shown off or something. So even the power, the GPU, CPU just keeps going up. Not that I think we really need it higher. Nat was, I think, suggesting just an M4 or M4 Pro is pretty dang punchy as a gaming rig these days.
Yeah, from the perspective of what we need to have a baseline of games being good, we definitely don't need more. Look at the Switch 2. It's it's under baseline M4 levels of performance. You compare it to an M4 MacBook Air, and the MacBook Air wins, right? And the Switch 2 is getting all the games. So we're not struggling to get games to the Mac because of hardware, because clearly lower performant hardware can get games. That's not the problem.
Right.
That said, the performance ceiling for what games can demand if you crank the settings, it's not like we've breached that, right? So there's still...
Right.
I would never say I don't want faster hardware.
Yeah, correct. Agreed. Yeah, so more good things to come. That I think about covers the show.
Yeah, I do want to touch on one last thing, just from like a
Please.
perspective of Apple's attitude towards gaming, and that they even if the momentum isn't as high as we want, there is that there's still a focus on games and an improvement on games. One side, of course, as we've already talked about, Game Porting Toolkit 3, better tooling for porting games. There's a new development environment where you can compile your Mac games straight from Visual Studio on a Windows machine, a plugin for Visual Studio and a development workflow there. So whole thing, they are still focusing on it, even if they haven't gotten the games there. And even Vision OS is getting game-related updates. It'll now support the PlayStation VR 2, what are they called, like Sense controllers, I think, which for that platform is a huge benefit for gaming. Hand tracking alone is fantastic for a certain category of games, but as soon as you want a character to like move around the world, hand tracking alone, a little problematic. Because you don't move with your hands. So the fact that you can now actually have a controller in your hands that gives you more buttons to press and a thumbstick or whatever, I think is a huge benefit for that platform. And the fact that it's just like Apple has fantastic support for game controllers across all of their systems, much better than Windows. I'm playing Assassin's Creed Shadows a lot on my Mac right now, and the fact that all of the PS5 controller features, exactly the same as what would work on a real PS5, are just out of the box supported with Apple's game controller framework, and the game uses that. It works so well. The light bar works, the adaptive triggers, all that, out of the box. No drivers, no nothing. And the fact that the Vision OS is getting that for the motion controllers as well, I think that's going to elevate the kind of gaming experiences Vision OS can have. And I think that's a great sign for the future of Vision OS, especially when it comes to future versions of Vision Pro, Vision Lite, Vision Air, whatever's going to come out, and opportunities to tether to the Mac for VR experiences. I don't know if things are going to go that way, but some groundwork is also being laid in that area. And Apple talked at some of the sessions, not just about porting your game to Mac as they used to, or porting your game to iPhone as they used to, but they explicitly said the phrase, port your games to the unified Apple gaming ecosystem, or something to that effect.
Yeah, they did.
So we talked about that before as like a direction Apple could take things, to use their market share of phones and tablets and all of that to bring more games to the ecosystem as a whole. And Apple is also talking into that marketing now, and there's a new game syncing framework to make it easier to sync games over iCloud than using the regular iCloud Files API that automatically deals with things like conflicting saves from playing offline and all these things. So there is momentum, even if it's not in the games front, and there is a lot of back-end stuff facilitating future experiences on all of the platforms, not just the Mac.
Yeah, it is. It is good. That's why I remain optimistic. Like, the attitude is good, even though like the inherent, like, here's cool new games right now is not there at the moment. But again, the attitude remains increased from that is increasing with Apple, actually, because they are putting more time into this, into the tech stacks and the new app and the new toolkits, and hopefully, they're keeping like working well with developers. Long ago, purportedly anyway, Valve would always complain dealing with Apple. We've covered this on the show before. It was like it was always a dead end, so they lost interest. But maybe, hopefully anyway, Apple's maintaining momentum, at least behind the scenes, with developers and other platform holders and what have you. It's again probably worth maybe a bit of its own show. I know Epic won some lawsuits against Apple, but they're appealing, and maybe they're forced to do more open things with the App Store, at least in certain places, blah, blah, blah. In a sense, that's neither here nor there, but my point is, I just hope they keep up whatever behind-the-scenes stuff we don't really see. So far, it seems to have been working, and hopefully that stays true.
Yeah, and I really look forward to seeing, as the macOS Tahoe and Game Porting Toolkit 3 betas progress, what that'll unlock, both in terms of performing better on existing titles, but especially in terms of compatibility. because they really have done a lot of things aligning the API capabilities and usage patterns between Metal and the other APIs that should make it easier to get that translation layer just right. So I think that'll be very promising as well.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot
Ending
of
on a high note.
Yeah, no, I'm very optimistic. I would like a cool new game to play now, but I'll have to wait. I don't know, putter around with something or the other. Or, I can just go play a board game or Warhammer or something. But yeah, I might have to wait a bit for something I really want to sink my teeth into. I'm hoping, again, it's not announced on the list, but I'm hoping like maybe Borderlands 4 gets a surprise. Here's a Mac port like they did with Borderlands 3. Very shortly after release. I think it was like a month after its PC release or whatever. And that's in September, so that's relatively soon. We'll see. Again, there's no basis for that other than what they did with BL3, so we'll see. Yeah, but that's it. More fun stuff. We'll be back soon, sooner or later, with more things to yak about. And yeah, so thanks for being here, Casper. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Yeah, thanks for the show. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.